Hello neighbor, I'm Robert Burns and welcome once again to another edition of Sound Off Louisiana. And it is a delight to be back with you. Tonight the President will be giving his State of the Union address, so I'm going to try to keep this video very brief because we're only hours away. But let me just say this, and I'm going to be very brief because we've got written material for you to get more information. Approximately 2 years ago, we did a feature on Jared Rickey, who is a member of the State Police Commission, with regard to him basically ignoring speed limits in sponsoring race cars across the nation. I'm not going to go into the detail because we have it there for you. But when we did that piece, we got correspondence from a group called Concerned Citizens of St. Tammany Parish. Concerned Citizens of St. Tammany Parish. I'm going to call it CCST going forward to be short. And they were kind of surprised that we were willing to put out that kind of material because they told us about just rampant corruption in St. Tammany Parish. And that was soon echoed, and again, we're going to give you the supply you to go in and look for the details if you'd like. They had both their coroner as well as their district attorney having ended up getting prison terms. One for about the coroner for about $350,000 in ill-gotten money where he should have performed the services himself, instead sent an on-the-clock employee who was not qualified to perform services for the Slidell jail. With regard to Walter Reed, I think most of you would know that as the district attorney, about, $680,000 in political corruption, and both of them wound up getting prison sentences. So I think it was well-founded, the concerns that CCST had. Well, we just got more correspondence, I guess perhaps in follow-up on the Jared Rickey feature that we did on regard to this campaign finance situation. And I'm going to just be blunt with you. What we got is extremely disturbing to me, and that is that the Chief Administrative Officer of St. Tammany Parish, who happens to be an attorney by the name of Kelly Rabalais, has actually made the runoff for being placed on the Board of Governors of the Louisiana State Bar Association. All right, now, you may wonder, well, what's so shocking about that? Well, I'm going to enlighten you on what's so shocking about that. Now, Miss Rabalais, who, as I said, has made the runoff, we're going to give you I thought this had to be a joke. I really did. But I got supplied the information to know it most certainly is not a joke. And we're going to give you the document down below that will show you the election. The voting ends on February the 11th for this upcoming election for the Louisiana State Bar Association 5th District. But we're also going to give you material that was put out on a blog, and we give you the direct link for the blog of a very fine attorney who put this material together for that blog. But I'm going to just hit the high points here. When Miss Rabalais was serving as basically an attorney for the St. Tammany Parish governmental body, the council, it turns out that a woman named Stevens, there was a drainage cut across her property, and the next thing you know, there was raw sewage flowing across it. And I know every single viewer, if you had that situation on your property, you wouldn't be very happy. And so Miss Stevens, along with some other homeowners, they started making public records requests. Well, the one responsible for dealing with these public records requests, and Miss Stevens, basically gave the runaround, and there were no records forthcoming, and as a result, litigation transpired. And in the midst of this litigation, lo and behold, she winds up getting a flash drive, called a thumb drive in the litigation. But there's a whole plethora of documentation. And contrary to what Miss Stevens had been asserted to by Miss Rabalais, i.e. that, look, you're a subservient of state. The dominant estate controls the parish, and there's a servitude here, and there's just nothing you can do about it. Well, guess what? It turns out that in these documents, which Miss Rabalais had, and which she found some creative ways to keep from turning over to Miss Stevens, it had clearly said the previous property owner was there was no servitude, okay? End of story, no servitude. And there was quite a bit of other material in there, but rather than focusing on the improprieties of Miss Rabalais, as happens so often with other state agencies, there was a man-house chase to find out who it was that leaked her this information. And of course, some of it may well be privileged. But nevertheless, all right, you know, you have been completely deceptive. And then it goes beyond that. She then made a representation, and we're giving you the high points down here. You're welcome to go ahead and read the material. But one of the council members issued a sworn affidavit, and he happens to have the expertise with regard to these type matters. And believe it or not, Miss Rabalais actually told Miss Stevens, according to all of this that's in the litigation and so forth, it's your responsibility to identify the culprit that is causing the raw sewage to come across your property. And this gentleman that issued the sworn affidavit, I believe, yeah, Jake Groby, District 7, he happens to have expertise in the matter, and he says, as a state licensed wastewater treatment operator and a councilman, I know that it is the parish's obligation, well, common sense ought to tell you that, once notified by a resident of an alleged illegal discharge, to go out in a timely manner and determine whether there is an illegal discharge, and then to notify the property owner that is the source of the illegal discharge, and to make sure that condition is remedied. And he goes on to say, we're not going to go through all of it, but you have the material there that you're welcome, and you have the link for the full-blown blog. But I do want to emphasize this. It says, if only the parish and Kelly Rabalais, this is the councilman, the former councilman here, had performed their sworn duty of correcting and not flowing illegal discharge across private citizens' land in violation of federal, state, and parish law, okay? And this woman has made the runoff to be on the Board of Governors of the Louisiana State Bar Association. And I'll point out that by the way, I'm doing things hurriedly, but Miss Rabalais said that, oh, this is a meritless suit, and you need to defend it. She's got a blatant conflict there in saying it's meritless. And so St. Tammany ends up spending $100,000 in defense of this litigation that was anything but meritless, okay? And this woman has made the runoff to be in an honorary position on the Board of Governors of the Louisiana State Bar Association. What does that say about the attorneys across or for that district that have placed her in this position? This woman may very well end up being on the Board of Governors, an incredibly prestigious position of the Louisiana State Bar Association. But before I go on to that, because I've got some more material I want to cover with you, and let me get just very few brief, some statements of facts, because many people wouldn't be aware of this. When you have a police jury form of government, you must use the district attorney to represent you in legal affairs. We know that already from the Calcasieu situation and Billy Broussard. I'm not going to get off on all that, except to say that statutorily you are required to use the district attorney, okay? Now, I mentioned Walter Reed, the former district attorney. He would have a practice as a courtesy for then President Kevin Davis, Parish President Kevin Davis, that he would basically appoint assistant district attorneys, much like the Attorney General's office does. There'll be private attorneys that can serve to represent. And it was done purely as a courtesy, but as I just told you, Walter Reed ended up with other accommodations, okay? And so when the new district attorney, a gentleman named Warren Montgomery, took over, well, let me backtrack a little bit. So the situation with the police jury, you have no latitude, okay? As everybody knows, St. Tammany was becoming a growing parish, just like Zachary. Zachary formed a home charter, giving them far more flexibility about whom they would employ as the attorney to represent them, and it doesn't have to be the district attorney. And I'm here to tell you I have sat in on court cases for which the city of Zachary has been sued, and they are not using the district attorney, and they have every right to do that because their home charter so specifies. Well, in the case of St. Tammany, their home charter, they, just like Zachary, decided to form a home charter form of government and because of the growth And that's very common. Municipalities will convert over from police jury to home charter as they grow, and nobody's here going to dispute that St. Tammany Parish has been booming. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And so they formed the home charter, but in their home charter, they said, we're still going to require that you use the district attorney to represent you legally. Well, that didn't sit real well with current parish president Pat Brister, okay? By the way, for those of you who may not know Miss Brister, she is a former chairman of the Republican Party. She was chairman of it just prior to Roger Villery. So we're talking about in the early part of this century. She then went on to serve on the council, and now she is the parish president of St. Tammany Parish. Well, she didn't particularly like this requirement that you had to use the services of the district attorney, and so they wound up putting it before a vote of the people, which makes good sense. All right, if the people want to change it, people can change it. Well, the people opted not to change it, okay? And so very frustrated that had happened, Brister just basically, I said, well, we're going to form our legal department, basically a fictitious entity, and we're going to continue to use Miss Brister, all right? That didn't sit well at all with the newly elected district attorney, Warren Montgomery, and so he basically decommissioned Miss Brister, and he also went so far as to file suit. This is the district attorney filing suit against the St. Tammany Parish Council, all right? Because he was going to say, you're going to do what? You're gonna do what your home charter says, and I'm going to represent you. Sorry that you don't like that fact, okay? And as I said, he ended up having to sue, okay? And this is the damning part. This is what is really, really damning. Even though it's got the word shall in the home charter, okay? The district judge ruled, nah, you can go out there and use private attorney, no big deal. So they had to appeal it. First Circuit Court of Appeals. Oh, look, you can do this. All right. And so what ended up happening, remember I told you about the group CCST? They wound up, well, the district attorney took this on to the Louisiana State Supreme Court. We are now talking about $500,000 of taxpayer money being utilized to fight a parish president who is insisting on cramming down who she wants as legal counsel. All right? You might see why I like videos rather than text. You can put the point of emphasis here, okay? $500,000, okay? And so CCST decided to file an amicus brief. That's basically a brief that is filed into the litigation for informative purposes. It may or may not have been at the urging of one of the parties, okay? And we're going to give you this link, especially for the attorneys out there who may not know for whom you have voted to possibly be on the Board of Governors for the State Bar Association, okay? We're going to give you the link for the entire amicus brief, but I'm just going to highlight what I consider some of the most incredible language. And it's on, I don't know, page 6 or so. We've got it blown up for you there. And I'm just going to read some of this because I find it incredible that an attorney would be this blunt, because it ought to be this obvious, okay? And it says, the current charter provides that the district attorney for St. Tammany shall, and I put that in huge, shall serve as the legal advisor and represent the parish in legal proceedings. And then he mentioned that, or they mentioned, that there was a vote taken, and the Times-Picayune said, and let's quote that little segment. Voters in St. Tammany Parish on Saturday, November the 21st, rejected controversial Proposition 5, calling for the elimination of the requirement that the district attorney serve as legal counsel for the parish government and parish council. The measure would let the parish president and council hire their own attorneys. It was defeated, okay? But when you have absolute power, it tends to corrupt absolutely, all right? That's all I can say. The hell with the will of the people. I want Kelly Rabalais saving his attorney. That's what we're going to do, okay? Let's read from there on, 2016 to date. So what changed? Nothing, except the defendant's tactics. Having failed at the legal route to get what they wanted, they thereafter concocted a fictional history, a, quote, legal department, completely independent of the district attorney, and a new and absurd reading of the charter in an attempt to do through the back door what they rejected by law to do through the front door. That the courts below have sanctioned this nonsense, this complete violation of the charter, the statutes, and so many other legal rules, not to mention plain common sense, and cost the taxpayers $500,000. That's not in there, that's my own ad-libbing. It is beyond belief, and the citizens, that's the CCST, are justifiably outraged. In fact, he follows it. CCST therefore implores this honorable court to reverse the judgment of the court below and remove this absurdity from the law. All right, so it goes before the Supreme Court. I want to again emphasize this has now cost the taxpayers of St. Tammany Parish $500,000. Okay, we're going to give you the ruling from the Supreme Court. I'll give you just the conclusion because that's where the meat will be. You're welcome to read the entire thing, but let's see what happened. This was a 7-0 vote. 7-0, and here's what it says in the conclusion. For the above and foregoing reasons, we reverse the judgment that granted summary judgment in favor of the St. Tammany Parish government and denied the district attorney's cross motion for summary judgment. Furthermore, we render summary judgment in favor of the district attorney, that would be Warren Montgomery, who thankfully stood the ground all the way to the Louisiana Supreme Court. For St. Tammany Parish, all costs associated with this appeal shall be assessed against the St. Tammany Parish government. And I will reiterate one last time, that was $500,000. Now, many of you may have taken note. We'll give you a link for it. Pat Brister, the parish attorney who has tried to ramrod down having Ms. Rabalais serve as the attorney against the charter, all right? And of course, when all this failed, what Ms. Brister did was to appoint Ms. Rabalais to her current position of Chief Administrative Officer. In other words, if y'all ain't gonna let me do it this way, I'm gonna do it, okay? I'm gonna see to it this woman's taken care of. And you remember, this is a woman who completely disloyal to her employer about this raw sewage, and $100,000 on that litigation. Now another $500,000 on this litigation. Already told you about the coroner and then subsequently the DA. St. Tammany is a hotbed of corruption, okay? But you may have noticed Covington Mayor Mike Cooper recently announced that he will be challenging Miss Brister for the parish president seat. And I would submit that it's probably time for new blood. Because as you can tell, when you get to these lofty positions, you know, being the former chairman of the Republican Party and serving on that council, becoming the parish president, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And in my firm opinion, it's time to clean up. It can't get any worse, all right? And I certainly can empathize with the concerned citizens of St. Tammany Parish. Now, I'm going to just conclude this with one last thing. Well, who is the alternative? You said she's in a runoff, okay? And she is. Her opponent is a gentleman named Jack Whitehead. And I first met Mr. Whitehead 4.5 years ago when I basically formed the genesis for what would be Sound Off Louisiana. I worked with two bloggers, primarily C.B. Ferguson and Tom Aswell, with regard to what was called the Edmondson Amendment, all right? I'm not going to go into all the details, but it basically was a boost to try to get Mike Edmondson a $55,000 boost in his retirement pension, snuck in through a completely unrelated bill. Well, Senator Dan Claytor, who happens to be my state senator, went ahead and sued over this as an individual citizen, as a taxpayer, to get this absurd, what had then become a law, okay, declared unconstitutional. I looked to see who filed that lawsuit, because I was darn sure, as most of you know, I attend court hearings. I'll be attending one on Monday, and we're going to look forward to giving you a report on that one too. But I attend a lot of court hearings, and the first thing I look for, well, who filed this lawsuit? And it was Jack Whitehead. All right. So I go to the hearing, and of course, as most of you will know, that thing was declared unconstitutional like that. But what I won't forget about that hearing is Mr. Whitehead volunteered. Now, they got into a squabble over court cost, okay? That's what it came down to. They got into a squabble over court costs. I never will forget Jack Whitehead getting up to argue before the judge, and he said, and it was Janice Clark who was the judge. He said, you know, Judge, I've done the right thing here. I've tried to be a really nice guy. I didn't charge a dime for legal fees. And we're actually going to be up here arguing about who's responsible for these court costs? And I will say this about John Kennedy. He was then treasurer. Now he is, of course, U.S. Senator, and he was very quickly to state that his agency would be putting up its proportionate share of the court costs for that whole proceeding. But at any rate, and I don't know how they wound up resolving the court costs, to be honest with you, because it was absolutely ridiculous that a squabble could even erupt over that matter. But at any rate, we're going to give you a little bio on Mr. Whitehead. Basically, at a very young age, as a teenager, his family lost their business, okay? And Mr. Whitehead had to lift himself up by the bootstraps. He put himself through undergraduate school, serving as a short order cook, as a roughneck out on oil fields. I mean, this man's not afraid to work, okay? And having met with him quite a few times since I first met him, I can tell you firsthand he works tirelessly, okay? And so in 1986, well, he got his undergraduate degree by doing all of these things, and the man is a CPA. All right, and I'm sure right then, well, okay, all right, yeah, you're a CPA too, Burns, so, you know, you're sticking up on, well, yes and no. Okay, well, it is commendable that he is a CPA. He worked for a Fortune 500 oil company, and then he decided he wanted to go to law school. And he put himself through law school, and he's done extremely well. Now, over the years, he's practiced in a variety of areas. Over the last 7 or 8 years, he has been a go-to attorney across the nation with regard to federal employment law. Now, he has many other specialties, but he has really become a designated, and half time when you call him, he tells you, well, I'm in Georgia, I'm in Texas. He's all over the country because he's become quite profound at federal employment law across this country. He got the designation by Martindale Hubbell, which is a peer rating firm for attorneys. He got the prestigious AV rating, and I'm here to tell you only one attorney out of every 100 out there, 1%, get that rating. It is an incredible distinction that he got. And he has volunteered numerous charities throughout Baton Rouge. You'll see it there on his bio. And so I know on a previous, we did a website for the governor's race that said thechoiceisclearla.com, and I think those same words are apropos in this situation. We are certainly going to follow this feature up to let you know how the attorneys voted, but I think the choice is clear in this instance. And I'm, to be honest with you, in disbelief that Kelly Rabalais has actually made the runoff. And if I hadn't seen it from my own 2 eyes, I never would have believed that the attorneys that are eligible to vote in there could have even enabled this to have happened. I think it's pretty clear if I were eligible to vote whom I would be voting for, and I think I've given you pretty good reasons why. We'll follow this feature up to let you know what the attorneys who get to vote in that election decide. Once again, this is Robert Gerns. I hope you enjoy tonight's State of the Union address, and we look forward to bringing you yet another feature, and it's actually going to be a little later this week. Thank you so much to all of our loyal viewership. Thank you once again.